Welcome to this month's post for Black Girl Math. We are continuing the conversation about Black girls belonging, and I have three amazing colleagues and guests to join me for my post this month and the conversation. I'm going to start off with my longtime friend, Dr. Carolyn Strong. I think I've known her since high school, and dynamic motivational speaker, also author and educator all around Black girls. She's also the founder of Centering Sisters, which I'm sure she will talk about more during our conversation. Also, another colleague who is tackling the T in technology in STEM. So, our STEMist for tonight is Jackie Smalls. I've been working with you for so long too. We're a dynamic duo of math and science educators and have been working together for a while. So I'm super excited. She is now in the C-suite as a part of the chief program officer for code.org. So I can't wait to hear more about what she's doing in the C-suite. And then Deborah Part,
Parrot.
I should have asked. I apologize. Deborah Peart, who, you know, how you just meet someone and you just connect. I think we connected during one of a presentation, maybe last fall, and just have been connected ever since. And so Deborah has three of my favorite things. She puts together math, mindfulness, and yoga as a longtime educator. She just started working with Unbound Ed and is a curriculum writer for illustrative mathematics, and also founder of Black Women Rock Math, one of my favorite spaces. So I hope to hear more about that during our conversation. Thank you all for joining me. Awesome. So we're going to get started and kick off into the conversation. I'm going to start off with Dr. Carolyn Strong. Tell me, and the question is, what drives you in your work to center Black girls and women? What's your why?
Well, um, being a black girl myself, no. Here's the thing. My why is that I'm always trying to answer the why. So having a background in discipline and having started to notice those disparities very early, the why that I began chasing was, why do we have such an egregious discipline gap for African American girls? And then the second why was, why is no one acknowledging or doing anything about this? So that was one of the things that I did. You know this, and I think you still think I'm an idiot for it. Is 3 years into my dissertation, which was originally focusing on the lack of representation for African Americans in gifted ed. I scrapped 3 years worth of research because I needed to answer the why of what historically had been going on with African American girls and women that was manifesting in such a way that we were seeing such a huge discipline gap and cultural culturally relevant discipline gap for black girls within schools. So one of the things that I came to find out was that the way that black women have been portrayed in our society directly correlates to how black girls see themselves and therefore each other. And when you don't see yourself portrayed well, you don't know how to behave. And I don't mean that in the way it sounds. I mean that in terms of, you're not seeing yourself treated well in any space. So you don't know how to treat yourself well. And if you don't know how to treat yourself well, then you don't know how to treat others well. And that manifests into black girls constantly coming into the discipline office, and the rate of recidivism that was going on in terms of, okay, well, we tried this and this didn't work, and it led me to realize that we needed to take a different approach. So that is what I have been trying to do, is take a different, more restorative approach, because we should know by now in 2021 that the punitive just doesn't work, especially when there's so much racialized and intersectional trauma that has to be addressed and healed.
Thanks, Dr. Strong. Deborah, what drives you? What's your why?
Well, my why came about a very long time ago as a mom. I have two girls and a boy. They're grown now, but still. as I was raising them, their friends gravitated to our home. I was a teacher, I had the faculty kids, we were in the elite private schools, and very few brown children. So all the brown children were my children. So they were all hanging out at my house. And while my son, his friends enjoyed being around, I pushed him towards the men that could teach him how to be a young man because I was a single mom. And I always had lots of girls, lots of girls, lots of girls. And we started a group called Sankofa Village. And I did that with girls and boys. And eventually the boys started having sports on Saturdays, and it dwindled. And we had one little boy, and then it was just all girls. And it just happened that way. Even before that, when my kids were really young, I had a group called Sisters of Ma'at, very similar to Girl Scouts, except we were earning different, not badges, but they did bracelets, and they were earning charms. And it was all about understanding who you are as a Black girl, what beauty should look like, and who defines it, loving yourself. We read books about the melanin and an understanding. And the main thing that I did was equip them outside of school to know who they were, so that when they were in the minority, they felt the confidence to answer the questions people kept throwing at them, especially around Dr. King's birthday. Everyone looks at you when you're one of a few. Everyone expects you to know, but you're just trying to learn with everyone else. So to remove some of that discomfort, we outside of school, we learned about ourselves, so that when you're sitting in the classroom, you know what you need to know to represent yourself, your people, and you don't feel crazy when everyone expects you to know and you don't know. And a
Mhm.
parent asked me if I would work with the kids because the Japanese students went to Japanese school and the Jewish students went to Hebrew school. So we took the stance that the school is teaching our kids how to read and write and do the basic things that are academic, but it's our jobs to teach them who they are as Black people in America. So that's where it started. And it moved towards mathematics more recently, just again, seeing the disparity, seeing the attention that is given to everyone else. And while, again, I have a Black son, and it was necessary that everyone was running to support our Black boys, but because our Black girls are quiet and blend in and they don't give as much trouble, they started slipping through the cracks. And I felt like we need to advocate for our girls and teach them how to speak up for themselves and make sure that they understand, like Dr. Strong said, they need to understand that just because there's a boy in the room, you don't have to be quiet. If you know the answer, say the answer. If you disagree with him, then disagree with him boldly. Be loud and wrong if that's what you need to be. And I was tired of girls being told they were sassy and rude just because they were speaking up or standing up for themselves or asking questions the teachers didn't know the answer to. So that's my why in a nutshell.
That's usually when they end up in my office, when they ask a question that the teacher can't answer and they don't know what to do. So they write a referral for insubordination, and then they kick the little Black girl out of the classroom.
Mm. And if you haven't read Push Out, my goodness, that will make you angry and make you want to shout and mm, 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 mm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deborah. Jackie, what's your why? What centers your work?
Oh, I think my why continues to develop and keep and continue to be fueled by that why. I would say one of the reasons, or one of my whys, would be the exhaustion that you feel and the loneliness that you feel at times in our field. How many times do we look, when we walk into the room, say we go to a conference? I don't know about you, but I know I do. The first thing is the look. Where is there someone that looks like me that I could connect with? And then you do the connection, then the nod, and then you do, meeting and greeting of each other. And so, how can we make sure that that doesn't have to exist for our girls, where they walk in the room and they know that they're already going to be there, not the only one there? And so, that continues to fuel my why. And then when we're there, what supports do we have? Because we know the journey to, say, to math and through science is not an easy one. One, because you're sometimes the only one, the only Black female, and then sometimes dismissed, even though you're there and you have every right to be there. So, how do you support and build that village that we need to continue to press through to what we know we can be and what we should be? And so that continues to be my why, as well as just knowing what is not recognized. You know, for some, it took a movie to realize there were hidden figures, right? A movie.
Preach, preach. And why didn't we know about them?
And then they chose not to choose all of those figures as well in the movie. If we know the history behind the
Girl,
not
it took a
free,
movie for
but
them to realize slavery.
right. And so much of a rich history that we can teach to our girls, that they are walking in the legacy that has been blazed, that is there for them to pick up and to move forward with. But how do we make sure they know it, they're educated about it, and well prepared to do so, and given the opportunity and choices if they so choose? And so I would also say my why is to continue to make sure that they have choices, that if I so choose to go to math, if I choose to go to science or technology, or, you know, in those fields, and or engineering, that there is a place for me and I feel comfortable in doing so. And remove the uncomfortability, if that's a word. Uh, I'm hearing it more and more. Why should we feel uncomfortable to fit in? Like, I want our girls to feel like they belong. So when we talked about that belonging, how can we make sure that they feel as though they deserve to be at the table, that they don't have to pull up the seat to the table, that they should be there and someone should be pulling that chair back and offering for them to sit down. And so my why is also because I feel as though someone did it for me. I was not inspired or encouraged to go into, say, science, and I went into a science field. I was going to be a physical education major. I like sports. That's what I like to do. I did it all the time. But I went to an HBCU where the biology chair stopped me one day and say, have you considered even thinking about going into a science or technology or a STEM field? Wasn't called STEM then. I won't tell my age. Wasn't called STEM then. But that was the first time. Why did it take 12 years for me to be then introduced to these are the pathways and these are the possibilities? And that's really what started my journey. But I was a freshman in college at a HBCU, that's where I was inspired. Otherwise, I would have taken another path. I'm so grateful that I chose to go to a HBCU rather than PWI, because I don't know if I'd be here having this conversation with you all right now, because I was going to be on a different path, but I feel like I was on a pathway that someone saw something in me and I saw myself in her. So how do I continue to, as I push, how do I continue to pull? And that's also part of my why.
Thanks, Jackie. And Deborah brought up push out and the criminalization of Black girls by Dr. Morris. And just again, how we, after even reading that book, and actually Dr. Strong introduced me to the book too, reading the book and then, but still seeing the stories. And those are the stories that make the news. So, 6-year-old getting handcuffed, 9-year-old getting pepper sprayed, Black women in Ivy League getting pushed out of their, of their research, of their work that they've been doing, and then trolled for the work that they do with Dr. Dina Simmons. What is happening in the spaces that you work in to Black girls and women, and how do we, I'll stop there. Like, what is happening and continues to push you in this work? I'm going to start with Deborah.
Oh, goodness. Well, I would say the biggest thing is that we are not there. And what do I mean by that? Dion, Kanika, and I came together because we literally felt like unicorns. Like, wait, Black women write curriculum for mathematics? Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Because I had no idea. I don't know who I thought wrote math curriculum as a teacher. Was it like, a castle on a hill and some old white gentleman? Like, I don't even know what I thought before I was approached about doing it. I don't know what that picture was, but I would imagine it didn't look like me. So for there to be 3 of us in the same place doing it, we realized that the person who hired us was intentional. She was looking for us because she saw lots of white males. Then the white females finally started to join in, and she said, "Well, where are women of color? Where are the women of color?" So she was seeking us out, and that's what I would say is the big thing that I see is that they're not there, they're not recognized. Um, when people, even in the classroom, to be quite honest, I was teaching elementary school, third grade, in an elite private school, and there were families who were very concerned that I was teaching their child math.
Mm.
Like, are you kidding me? Your kid is 8. Like, what? And it was because I wasn't teaching it in the way they wanted to see it taught. So they questioned everything that I did. But in the end, they thanked me. But they fought all the way, and their children came along before they did because their children, for the first time ever, had started to enjoy mathematics and understand it deeply. But I had to fight. And I told the principal, I said, "I'm too old for this. I'm not begging these people to let me teach their children mathematics." So just not being respected. And even at the elementary level, thinking about Black women, women in general in mathematics, that it's not even acknowledged. You're not a math teacher. I mean, you just teach elementary. Do you know what it takes to understand how children actually learn mathematics and developmentally what happens? We could talk about counting for weeks and what actually happens. So the intellect that is not respected for understanding how children learn mathematics and not being acknowledged. So is what I would say drives me in the work is we want to amplify the voices of Black women in math education, not necessarily just mathematicians who are studying mathematics to the highest level or who are going into mathematical fields, but the people who are studying how children learn mathematics so that our girls have the choice to go into these math fields. So that's my why. It's all about equipping us to be leaders in math education and for people to recognize us as leaders and even know that we're here. I feel like Horton Hears a Who. We are here, we are here, we are here. Just begging people to recognize that that's a thing we do.
Absolutely. Dr. Strong, you talked about Black girls and what you've been seeing in as far as discipline, the discipline gap. Tell us more about what you're seeing.
Well, I I'm trying to figure out where to start because since I just wrote a 223-page dissertation about it, um, let me see where I can narrow that down. I think that again for me, that one of the things that I noticed because I'm in the high school and I actively recognize that the things I'm seeing didn't just begin the day that they walked into the high school doors. A lot of our girls don't feel seen. They don't feel seen in a way that's authentic. They feel seen in a way that's a problem. And there's only so many times that you can see someone in a way that makes them think they're a problem before that's the persona that they adopt. And I think that we get a lot of that because one of the things that I notice when kids come into me in the discipline office, one of the first things I ask them is what happened. And they're often taken aback by the fact that I'm even asking. I'm like, okay, well, what is your version of what happened? Excuse me. And before they get to know me, the usual response is, you got the referral? Yes. And this is what the teacher said happened. So I'm asking you what happened. And sometimes that just being seen even in that way, even if they were wrong, just getting the opportunity to tell their version in their own words goes a long way. And we and Black girls are so often pushed to the side for everyone. And I mean, white people notwithstanding, and even boys, we just aren't a priority for anybody. And a lot of times not even in our own households by our own moms because they're so focused on their boys and knowing that their daughters are going to be all right because they're all right. And sometimes even in the work that we do for Center and Sisters, it's like, are you okay? Are you, sis? Because you don't seem okay to me, and you are replicating this toxicity in the name of making your child strong, and that's not okay. And by the time they get to me in the high school, this is kind of a way of life for them, in terms of having all of these expectations on what people should expect from you as a Black girl. And then with the with the adultification piece that goes on with Black girls, you're having high schoolers or freshmen that are having these adult expectations put on them. And it's like, last time I checked, this person's brain was not developed enough for you to be putting all of these expectations on them. So I think that we really have to reevaluate what it is that we expect of Black girls. It's like, yes, you can do anything you put your mind to, but I'm still obligated to show you how to get there. That's my job. And a lot of times we don't do that. We hand girls some wood and some nails, and we say, all right, when you're done with that, get in the canoe and then go pick up your brother and do whatever else you got to do. And they're like standing there with the wood, like, but how? And it's like, well, I had to build a canoe at 12. You'll figure it out. And a lot, and we and our girls internalize that, and they get to the point where they start thinking they don't need any help, and they don't have to ask anybody, and whatever this is just the way it's going to be. And so now you got the girls that are shutting down, and they don't want to talk to you. So I could do this all day, so I'm gonna shut up.
Jackie, and you were involved in at Black Girls Code. Tell us more about what brought you to Black Girls Code, and also what were you seeing with Black girls in coding and in computer science?
Yeah, well, before I even get there, can we go back a minute? Because what I heard from Dr. Strong and what I'm hearing from Deborah as well, and the most neglected person in America is a Black woman, right? We've heard that, and I believe Malcolm X said that, and just thinking about who we are. Black women are strong. Okay, what does that actually mean in terms of, yes, we are, but we still need the support and help of others. And so that in itself, to me, is just, it's troublesome as you think of how we are centered to be these strong figures. And yes, we are, but that doesn't mean that we don't need the village and support around us to continue to carry the things, that those expectations that have been placed upon us. I think we all could share stories about how we've had to be strong when we're suffering inside, because that might be either the expectation of us or what others expect us to be. And so creating a space for Black girls to understand that there's a uniqueness about them, but how do we nurture it and how do we develop it as well? The time around that I worked with Black Girls Code, it was just simply a study. We could talk about women at first, that uniquely, inherently, students act different, especially girls, in an environment when placed against a boy. They tend to lower their thoughts. They don't think they're as smart. They don't want to raise their voice because of that dynamic. But then you also add the fact that when you add in that you're a Black woman or a Black young girl, that places other things that we need to deal with and understand on how best to make sure they feel like they're included in this conversation that we want them to be included in, and to feel as though they're equipped. And so working with Black Girls Code, it wasn't just about coding. It was about Kimberly Bryan and her amazing approach and thinking about her daughter, when she said her daughter wanted to go to coding classes, but when she turned around, there was just white boys around. And so she's like, well, I'll just create this for you. We'll create a club. The club became Black Girls Code as we know it. And it's about building a village for the girls to feel like they have a safe and secure place to be able to learn in the way that is best for them. And that, in like, I think someone said it earlier, just because you speak up does not mean that you're being disrespectful or you're rude or you're angry. Hello? It just means that you have an opinion and it should be voiced and it should be heard. And so that is why I think it's so important. That what continues to drive me. What continues to drive me as well is just knowing that our girls need to see us so they can see themselves. It's unfortunate that all of my teachers that I have, I remember the names of two in elementary. One is because it was the only Black teacher I had in my K-12 education.
Mm.
And I
I
grew up
had
in New York.
0. I had 0 and
So
I grew up in New York.
I can tell you different places where I grew up. But Mrs. Rose, second grade, Mrs. Rose, second grade in Long Island. I remember her to this day. And I think the internet might be unstable. Can you all hear me? I just had a
Yeah.
little sign. I carry her name with me today because I remember her being the very first figure that I saw of an educator who, again, was believed in me and what I could do. And she was an educator where all the other educators around me were not of, of that color. So the drive is to create this space of let's make this normalized rather than the the exception to the rule, right? So how do we do that? And that's what continues to drive me to keep closing the gap, stop ignoring that a gap exists, and stop telling me it's a pipeline issue because it's not. We're here. I just need you to recognize that we're here and we should be.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jackie, for also sharing and the importance of the village and the space to, because we are here. We're just, as Dr. Strong was saying earlier, not seen and absolutely not valued, as Deborah was also sharing too. And so thinking about those spaces you're creating and having that village, what are some ways that you've seen or that you're doing yourselves that you center Black girls and women in, that is sustainable? Like, what can educators do? What can people do that are in your spaces to make sure that we are here, we are valued, and we're seen and affirmed for who we are?
I'm sorry. Did you say who was taking that? Was that supposed
No,
to be
I
me?
did not. Jackie, go ahead. I did not do the order. I apologize.
What's sustainable? Gosh, I think one, having conversations like these need to continue and they need to be had. I've heard, folks talk about allyship, but like, I don't need an ally. I need a co-conspirator. Like, I need somebody that's willing to do the work and not just say, I'm here to support you to do the work, but also willing to do the work right beside you. I think that's also, and I love that we can come together like this and stop believing that we can't do this. Because how many times are we told, oh, well, we can't get along, so how are we going to help the movement if we can't even agree? That's a lie. And let's continue to call it that, and also show our girls that they have this village. There is a space. They need to be here and continue to do the work that we're doing in our various fields. And also just acknowledge that I think it was Deborah, when you said it's not that they necessarily need to become a mathematician. And then you might say, yes, they need to. I get it. Or they need to become a scientist. But let's just think about how we can support their thought process of being critical thinkers, problem solvers. And if you might not be a traditional mathematician or scientist, but look at our sister, Melissa Butler, who developed Lip Bar, right? In terms of cosmetics, because she saw that there was an opportunity that we don't have lots of colors that are geared to us, that are safe for us, free of chemicals. So I'm going to create this. Yep. See? So I'm going to create this for me and for my community. And so she's learning math, she's learning science. She had to apply it and use it, and then created an empire for it. So we need to also show them the non-traditional ways of which they can also engage in the fields that we call STEM, and show them that it's not someone that is of just a celebrity that can do this, but can also make sure that they can just do it for themselves and or their community and make a huge impact.
Right.
So I think those are the sustainable ways, really showing the real world connections that make sense and impacts their everyday lives of how they can consider seeing themselves making a difference in their community.
Thank you so much. Dr. Strong.
Well, a couple things. I think that, again, because I'm I'm not in STEM, I tend to, my answers are going to be more general. But I think that one of the things that we need to acknowledge as Black women, and that's something that's going to trickle down to Black girls, is that we as Black women have always had to engage in some form of higher order thinking. We've always had to utilize these skills, like from our inception, as what you would consider to be a Black woman. We've always had to be the one to figure things out for various reasons that we could name historically. But the reality of the situation is that these are always things that we've had to do. But because no one has ever put a name on it and told us that we were engaging in math, we think we can't do this. But I know for a fact my mama had to make $1 out of 15 cents many a day. And all right, this is how much we got. This is what's on sale over here. This is 25% off. So this is the list of stuff that's coming from Jewel. This is the list of stuff that's coming from over here, because that was 25% off over there, but it's 40% off over there. And she was not trained in STEM, but she knew what she had to do to make things work. And I think that a lot of Black girls have those same skills, especially when you talk about Black girls in urban settings, because that's where the majority of my experience is. And the inner city Black girls who, of course, don't have these high power STEM programs, and it's an all Black school. So it's not even for them, it's not even a situation of where the white males are getting all the STEM attention. It's a situation of where STEM isn't even here because it's a Black school. And so why would we even enter this space in the first place? And so I think that one of the things that I always tell people is that representation is always going to be the number one asset that you have, because you can't be what you don't see. And I mean, I believe that to an extent. And I think that I think that even in situations where you don't have to have somebody come to your class and say, I am a Negro and I study math, that's not necessary. But even if just a Black woman is coming to your class and saying, I am a pharmacist and this is what it's going to take to be like it never has to be mentioned for the people that need to receive the message just the fact that you are here in your authentic Black skin as a fully actualized STEM professional is going to be the what you can see for some people. And that is going to be enough. And I can't stress enough the things that need to be sustainable are creating safe spaces for Black women and Black girls. And for me, what you'll hear me say a lot is that Black women and Black girls are always going to be together, because you can't have healthy Black girls without healthy Black women. That's just, you just cannot, which is the reason that two of my friends and I, when we founded Centering Sisters, which is an organization that is devoted to the mental health of Black women and Black girls, and creating safe spaces for Black women and Black girls. And because we need those spaces and we don't have those spaces. And when we try to create those spaces, a lot of times they're trying to be infiltrated in the name of equity, because no one was concerned about equity until you were excluded, but I digress. And so keeping those spaces safe and sacred for Black girls to have conversations that no one else is going to understand, or to talk about things and not have to take a moment to pivot and explain themselves. A Black girl should be able to walk into a room and say something that is very culturally specific without having to take a beat and somebody go, but wait, what does that mean? Well, if you don't know, it wasn't for you. And it's okay for things not to be for you. It really is. But when you are used to being centered in that way, you don't really know what to do with yourself when you're not. And so what we're going to have to do is figure out a way to normalize Black girls feeling that they have the same right to be centered in that way, because they don't. The minute someone else comes in, they shrink and they take a step back because they're not used to being at the forefront in the first place. So they don't believe that they belong there. And they believe that their centering is a privilege and not a right. And it's a right.
Thank you, Dr.
So
Stone. Absolutely. Or that they have to take care of everyone else's feelings or belonging before they can. So I
when
really,
we're done muling,
yeah.
when we're finished muling.
Amen to that. Amen.
And
Deborah, what are some ways that you are in your work that you're centering Black girls and women that are, or ways that you've even seen or practices that are sustainable?
well, for me, my consulting business is My Mathematical Mind, and that's all about managing anxiety in math class and life and building confidence and then layering on math understanding. So don't laugh at me, but I have a dream. I have two dreams, really. I would love to open a group home for girls who are not yet teenagers. I want to get them before they are troubled teens. I want a group home to support young girls right in that weird age where they stop being cute enough to adopt, 5 to 12 ish, but to have them have experiences like something musical, something physical, and academic support. So for them to be adoptable, for them to still be wanted and see themselves as princesses, why can't they have a group home with canopy beds? Like something lovely. I would love to one day open a group home that is for young girls that are not yet troubled teens, to help them experience something different and help move them along on a path that would not be the typical path. It's one of my big dreams long term. Another dream I have, this is the one I want you to not laugh at. If you could think about the magic school bus, I want to have a bus, not a big bus, like the short bus, and all the seats are gutted, and I have all the math manipulatives and math tools and math everything I need, and drive into communities. See, because you not having the resources isn't going to stop me from bringing the math to you. And I would love to actually go into communities, whether it's meeting at churches or community centers, and just doing math scavenger hunts, just experiencing math in a different way. And then specifically for Black girls, the first thing I would say is, first of all, saying it's for Black girls only, because that is, again, that's a problem. I made some math
Mhm.
kits, some stay home math kits for kids, but I wanted it to be specifically for Black girls. It was a part of our Black Girls and Black Women Rock Math Challenge. And I had the hardest time giving away the math kits
Hmm.
because I kept saying, I called people who were coaches, principals. I spoke to all different people. I'm new to the area, so I didn't know my people. I just have these math kits. They have all kinds of math manipulatives, tools, pencils, everything they need, working virtually at home. I want Black girls to have these. Well, is it only for Black girls? Could any family? I can you find me some Black girls to I just want to give it to them. That's all. Just free. I will drive to their homes and drop it on the doorstep. I would drive to a church. It took me weeks to give it away because I said I wanted it to be for Black girls. And
Hmm.
again, equity, whatever. So there's that, but just calling it out that it's okay that I want to do something just for Black girls. And then my last big dream is to actually have some kind of program that offers, because I remember the first time one of my kids went to sleepaway camp, which I grew up at sleepaway camp and boarding school, that was punishment. You send your kids away. But in the elite schools, that's a regular thing. They have really cool things at these sleepaway camps. They cost so much money that you can get scholarships. I didn't qualify, but there was a lot that they were missing that was a best kept secret. And I would love to offer retreats for Black girls, young Black girls, with yoga, with mindfulness, with STEM, with all of those things, like as they say, in the blue mountains of blah, 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 the fancy spot. but just girls get not a lot of technology, but just some self-love, self-care, talking about hair and just all of that, blocking out like a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, and bringing the Black women who do the things that I want them to experience so that they just have an away from helping raise everybody else, love on everybody else, and be there for everybody else, and just get time to just look in the mirror and say, I'm beautiful. I deserve self care. I'm smart. I'm good enough. I am enough. My hair is beautiful. And just being bathed in that so that they could be sent back into their realities with just a little bit more confidence and understanding of who they really are. Because we always connected with Sankofa Village. We didn't take it back to Hidden Figures. We took it back to the motherland. My ancestors built the pyramids, were great astronomers, mathematicians. Others came and learned at the feet of the original scientists, historians, people who build all the buildings, and for them to understand that if that's my heritage, that's my ancestry,
Right.
who's
Right.
better than me?
Mhm.
And not knowing that you literally come from Queens.
Right.
Enslaved people, not slaves.
Queen.
We were not slaves, right? That's what I remember
Right.
growing up. Black history was, y'all were slaves. You probably deserved it. And then there was this guy, Dr. King and Rosa Parks. Bam, Black history, done.
There was a peanut
it's
and a
literal-
huckleberry along the way.
Right.
Yeah.
What happened to be a queen? A queen, a beautiful, majestic queen that had
Yeah.
people at her feet that donned this crown of, how can we also show that that's where your history, that is in your DNA.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You're right.
That's what Sankofa, yeah.
Right.
That's Sankofa, and that's why it was called Sankofa Village. Looking back to understand where you came from so that you can keep moving forward.
Right.
And you
And
have to
birth
have
nation, and birth nations. Like, let's talk. Well, we can talk all night. We got more time.
Deborah,
Because
why would you think we would laugh at your dreams? Let me know when that bus is taking off, because I
Right,
love laughing at Nicola kids.
right,
Outfit
my
my kid.
sister.
And Oprah could say, and you get a bus, and you get a bus. We need to talk to Oprah, right?
Right.
I'm telling you, my sister said, I'm going to have my own theme music. The ice cream truck comes through.
Yes.
But I'm going to have some cool math woman music, like, don't driving through. And they're like, the math bus is coming.
I love it. I love it.
But in speaking to that, just one thing that struck, both of you have said it, and that's just part of my work. What I do with code.org is making sure there's access, right? Like you said, we need, a lot of folks don't know this, but in terms of our work, we direct our scholarships for professional learning towards teachers that meet a demographic that is not represented in computer science. So Wakoda, we want computer science in every school, but we know that there's only certain schools that it's represented based on a zip code and based on the students that attend, right? And not that we want every student to be a computer scientist, but I certainly want them to know that this is not magic. Someone created it and programmed it, and how does it work? So that you have a choice of, yeah, that might be something I want to do or not. But let's give you the choice and the opportunity to say, I choose not to, or I choose to do so. And that access, we talk about equity. Ooh, you almost knocked me off my seat right there. Because I'm not understanding where we talk about education that should be afforded to all.
Right.
And we know that it's not.
Absolutely.
It was
And so
never
when you talk
designed
about
to.
drive, whew, that drive, I'm sorry, Dr. Strong, you were going to say something. But
No, I said it was never designed to. And
correct.
And that's the thing that we have to keep up front, is that Black children are being dropped into a system that was created literally before they were considered people. And even when we began to redefine that system, even in the redefining, when folk like Horace Mann started to enter the chat, we were still redefining a system that was never designed for Black people, because when public education was designed, Black people were chattel slaves. And when education was being redefined, women still weren't people, weren't still were not a consideration. So when you take a look at where Black women fall on this totem pole, we are at the bottom with the cement, making sure the totem pole holding everybody else up doesn't fall over per
Mhm.
usual. So
Mm.
when we start talking about equity, you cannot have true equity until you start dismantling some of these systems and rebuilding them to be truly inclusive and reflective of everybody that now utilizes these systems. I mean, let's be clear. Why do schools have bells? Schools still operate on a bell system to acclimate people to factory work.
Mm.
And most of the factories are gone, but we still ringing bells for kids to move around.
Mm.
Mhm.
And when you think about those elite schools that you all have been talking about, what
They
don't
don't
they
have
have?
bells. They don't have bells.
They don't have bells
And guess
because
what else?
they, right, they don't have bells. Are you ready to go? Do you feel like moving right now? Because if
Right.
you feel like moving, then you should. If
But
you
guess
don't,
what? They also don't walk in straight lines with their hands behind their backs. They do not. They
exactly.
also walk freely across campus starting in fourth grade. That was when they earned the privilege to
Mhm,
walk on the whole campus without even teachers.
mhm.
I'd say, okay, guys, it's time for art. And they go and go to art on the other side of the campus. But when you have a school that in preschool, I watched that we visited a school and my heart was breaking because I was visiting a pre-K classroom and
Mm.
everything was, and again, Black and brown students, and everything was on command in unison. And then she said, and what do scholars look like? And they all sat up. I said, what does college ready look like? That is not
Mhm.
true. I've never seen that on a college campus. But the thing that broke my heart, they
Do
were
you see my
moving in,
books?
right, they
I got 4 degrees.
they were moving in centers. So imagine they are staying inside the classroom. And the teacher said it was time for the next rotation. And she gave her little signal, and they all stood. They were silent to move in the classroom. One finger on your lips and your hand behind your back. And they had to just to move to the next station.
Mhm.
And one little boy spoke to one of us who was visiting. He had asked a question. And do you know the little boy got in trouble for speaking?
Mhm.
And an adult had asked him a question. And our guy felt so bad. He was just like, I feel terrible because he got in trouble for speaking to me. But the rule is when you move, you don't speak.
Mhm.
Pre-K.
And you couple that with those, the bell don't dismiss you, I dismiss you teachers.
Mm.
And then you create this system that is strategically creating new followers and not innovators in these Black and brown spaces. Like we are training workers, we're not training innovators. We are not training those people.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. We are not training those people to say, I don't see a lip color, I'm gonna go do it myself. It's there, they're just gonna be like, well, I guess it's just not gonna be for me.
Mm.
And that's what they want.
And you're right. In this, and the kids are so, especially our girls, um, are so much more creative than that, and struggling and trying to maintain
This-
some identity within that at the same time. How do I conform to what I'm being told to do, but how do I also express myself the way that I need to express myself in order to grow and feel nurtured? I was at a workshop for Black Girls Code, and the girls, 11-year-olds, they were given the opportunity to create an app. Can y'all, what would you think an 11-year-old group of girls? What would you think they were? I think they were 7 to 11. What do you think they would want to create an app about? Just real quick, ask my sisters. What do y'all think they would want to create an app about?
Mm. Well, I think I could see them wanting to do something that would help the planet or something that would educate people about problems with littering the planet. Um, I can't even, the word is escaping me, composting, like all of, like something for planet care, something for social justice, something these days,
About community,
Yeah, and that's what I was
something for
gonna say. I'm
community
like,
building.
like
Yeah.
the
No,
where I'm from, they want to record the police.
mm,
That's the app they want.
do you know the app that I hear you, but this is what just touched my heart. They wanted to create a mental health app,
amen.
Mm,
which to me spoke volumes. They said,
yeah.
how could create an app that if we hit an emoji, it will tell you how I'm feeling, then automatically pop you into a group of those that feel the same way. So you have a
Wow,
support system.
Wow.
That
Well,
just gave me chills.
they're more in
And this
tune than most grown folks.
7 to 11-year-olds saying that we need to create something that gives us the support that we need in order to deal with mental health and how we see ourselves and how we feel about ourselves and how we are able to exist. And that yeah, touched my heart. Their whole presentation around why was this needed, not only for them, but for their community of girls. And that should speak volumes of what our girls need.
Which brings me
And
to
so
my next question: where's the app, and how do we amplify it?
right. Right.
Absolutely. I need to invest.
they
And,
were at
and
the patent office. I will say that at least.
the amazing thing is that our children know, our girls, our women know when
Mhm.
they are not being seen, they are not being valued in their own needs. And we just, how do we tap in to support them and be there
Mhm.
for them? So
And
one of my
Mhm.
last questions for each one of you, and you'll have some time to think, is what is one thing that your village does for you to center you in your work that you do? Because you all, thank you all for showing up in the royal color purple, all of my queen educators. So I really appreciate you all. But what is one thing that you do, that your village does, that will center you? I will start. So one thing that my village does to center me, uh, Dr. Strong is part of my village, which is we will, especially during pandemic, we've been doing car pancakes or car breakfast. And so because I'm like, hey, I'm living in this space by myself. And so how do I, how do I connect during a pandemic and safely? And so we will pick up food from a local eatery and we will sit in our cars and chat and have breakfast just like we used to do.
Love that.
It's getting a little scary though, because the world is opening up. I'm like, it's 50 people in the pancake house. What is going on?
Who's ready to share what is one thing that your village does to center you?
one thing that my village does to center me, my broader village, because it is virtual. There's a group of women. We started a group, gosh, a decade ago, for take self care and for working out in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week, or 5 days a week. And I did that for 7 years, but then I moved away. And I've been away and just trying to find something. And now, because of the pandemic, it's virtual. So I get to be with my boot camp folks 4 days a week. They're up in Connecticut, and I get to tune in at 6:15 and do it in my living room with them. So that's one thing that I enjoy. And then the other thing is Black Women Rock Math. Dion, Kanika, and I, we meet every week and we text and communicate all week long about the work we're doing, about the things we need, about our health, staying on track. And we are so excited that hopefully soon we will have a sister trip. We're all going to make sure we quarantine. We are all getting vaccinated and we are going to meet somewhere in the next few months. So I feel blessed to have the village that I do.
Awesome.
So you all kind of touched on something I didn't. I literally just got the text message. So I started. I've been on this journey for the last 18 months, where I went vegan, and so it's another whole story where I lost 70 pounds. So uh, I've been learning to share that journey, which feeds me, and sharing with my sisters. So I'm now doing a 6 o'clock wellness session with several women, and they just text me, are we having our session tomorrow? So part of it was that we were separated for so long, and like, how do we bring and come together in a healthy way? And so 6 o'clock Friday mornings, we call it Fellowship Fridays, that we come together to support one another, move our bodies, talk about ways that we could be healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and just to have that space with each other on Fridays. And that's been going on for the last couple of weeks. So I look forward to those, even though it's hard sometimes, 6 o'clock in the morning, but we still do it.
For me, like I said, I am definitely grateful for learning how to consume food in my car. That has been an experience and a good one. But I think one of the things that I am truly grateful for is to be surrounded by a group of Black women that hold me accountable, and not necessarily accountable in the sense of here's something else to add to your list, but
Mhm.
accountable in the sense of why is there so much stuff on your list? What, like, there's nothing on this list you could have delegated. There's nothing else you couldn't have called nobody. I could have done that, and that's hard to take for me because I've always been so independent as a trauma response. And so just having women in my life that are like, would you please let us help you? And being able to let them help me has been humbling for me, but not in a bad way.
Mhm.
So,
Thank you all so much for lending your voices, your work that you're doing for Black women and girls. I really have appreciated you sharing your experiences with Black Girl Math. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
thank
It
you.
was
No, I'm just a
Absolutely.
phone
It
call
was
away.
truly a blessing. Thank you.